to success.
I'm Jeff Bennett here on Capitol Hill for Morning Joe, and this morning Congress reconvenes. You have both the House and the Senate coming back here to Washington. There are only about 40 days left in the congressional calendar before the end of the year, and it is a packed agenda. Members have to fund the government. They have to figure out what to do, if anything, with the president's new trade deal, the USMCA. They also have to figure out what to do with guns. Democrats, really spurred by the recent twin tragedies in Texas and Ohio, are making another run at pushing gun control. It's something that has languished for some 2 decades really here on Capitol Hill. But on Wednesday, the House Judiciary Committee plans to mark up, which means they plan to debate and amend 3 new bills that they then want to send over to the Republican-led Senate. So they want to look at ending high-capacity magazines. They also want to look at making a federal framework for so-called red flag laws. And red flag laws are the things that would allow law enforcement officials and family members to petition a court to get guns away from people who might pose a threat to themselves and others. And I understand we have Joe and Mika back with us. And of course, as you well both know, the other thing that we're looking for is to see what this committee does, the House Judiciary Committee does, on impeachment, because we've also learned that today we'll get a look at the resolution that these members plan to vote on Wednesday that will really formalize their work, formalize this impeachment inquiry. And that'll really be welcome news to those people who have watched this committee's work, and they might have been frustrated or confused, not only by the pace of this investigation, but just what this committee is up to, guys.
Yeah, Jeff, thank you. And Joe, that is the the issue as we look at these moves to formalize impeachment proceedings. But when the public is ready for that seems to be what a lot of leading Democrats are looking for, and when Republicans might want to step in and be involved.
Yeah, well, lots of luck on that. I don't think that's going to happen, Rev. There continues to be this friction between Nancy Pelosi, who is interested in winning in 2020 and thinking that and if you look at the polls, I mean, most Americans do not want the Democrats to get involved with impeachment proceedings, but a lot of the base does. And of course, more importantly, a lot of the members feel they have a constitutional duty to do that. So how are Democrats balancing these two competing interests?
With a lot of difficulty, they are trying to balance it. You have at one level a lot of Democrats that are in districts that politically it is risky for them to go but so far, because they won districts in close margins, many of them flipping districts that had been Republican. So the politics speaks to one thing, but the actual protecting of the Constitution speaks to another, and that is, if with all of these clear allegations of obstruction and other improprieties, if you do not move toward impeachment now, when do you? And what is the basis of an impeachment proceeding in the future if you ignore all of the body of evidence that has been raised against this president, to take it to its natural course to see if, in fact, it is impeachable offenses?
And this morning, Senator Kamala Harris has released her plan for comprehensive criminal justice reform, seeking to overhaul the system that she views as broken and biased. Harris's plan, in part, aims to significantly reduce the number of people incarcerated by ending mandatory minimum sentences, legalize marijuana, fund re-entry programs to reduce recidivism, bolster accountability for prosecutors and police. Reverend Al recently sat down with Senator Harris, where she explained her plan in further detail. Let's take a look.
My plan is an extension of all my experiences, plus what I know is achievable in terms of fixing a broken system. So there is an element of the plan that is about ending mass incarceration, because America has a problem with mass incarceration. We have incarcerated disproportionately generations of men of color, black and brown men in particular. So that part of it is about dealing with sentencing reform. That part of it is dealing with what we need to do, which is to legalize marijuana. It is about dealing with what we are doing in terms of creating priorities and looking at the fact that the war on drugs was a failure. We criminalized what was otherwise a public health issue, and that needs to end. On the issue of law enforcement accountability, and it's both as it relates to police officers but also prosecutors, we need to make sure that the system is dealing with the abuses when they occur. Because, you know, we have a criminal justice system where we often use the words accountability and consequence. But almost every time those words are used, it is in connection with the person who is arrested, and we do not use that word in connection with the system as a whole. And is the system as a whole being held accountable, and is there consequence for bad behaviors within the system? My plan is saying that we need to have a national standard of force that is about necessary use of force, right? In the case of the fatal shootings that we have seen. My plan is about saying that there needs to be, in the United States Department of Justice, and an element from the Civil Rights Division that is about preparedness to investigate patterns and practice of misconduct, not only by police departments, but also by prosecutors' offices. Because where that exists, there should be some kind of investigation and some kind of consequence. My plan is about saying that we need to focus on children. So when I was Attorney General of California, I ran the second largest Department of Justice in the United States, second only to the United States Department of Justice, and created in that Department of Justice the Bureau of Children's Justice, focused on holding the system accountable to what we should be doing to serve our children and give them the benefit of all the services that they deserve. It is my intention to shut down private prisons, and by extension, frankly, also those private detention centers. Because here's the thing. The business model, let's just step back and think about what the business model is. It's about people making profit off the incarceration of other human beings. There should never be a profit associated with incarcerating other human beings.
So, Rev, what was your take on Kamala's approach to criminal justice reform?
I was very interested in hearing what she had to say, because as you know, Joy and Mika, I spent most of my life in the area of fighting for criminal justice reform. I work with National Action Network. And I must say I was impressed with how detailed and different it was. She didn't just give the hashtag or slogan kind of heading. She talked about holding prosecutors, which she was, as well as police accountable, as well as what is fair for those that are crime victims. Because what a lot of people forget is in communities of color, you have victims and you have those that have been treated wrongly by the criminal justice system, but that does not mean we do not want to see victims protected. She talked about taking the profit out of prisons. She talked at length about how you legalize marijuana. I thought it was well thought out. I think she's unique in this race because she not only has been a prosecutor, but she's a black woman. And so she has looked at it on both sides. So frankly, I thought she'd have a decent plan, but it was above my expectations. And it's certainly a lot more detailed and different than a lot of the other candidates who have come out with criminal justice plans. And it certainly hits a whole lot deeper into the core problems on both sides than the First Step program that the president is tweeting about this weekend.
Okay. Joining us now, politics and journalism professor at Morgan State University and an MSNBC political contributor, Jason Johnson. So, Jason, talk about how impeachment fits into the politics of all of this. When you see Senator Kamala Harris going so in-depth on an issue that is clearly so important, one of the issues of our time, and yet you also have this happening in Washington, some Democrats wanting to push impeachment. How does it fit into the political conversation as candidates vie for 2020?
Well, Mika, what we're heading towards is really the 11th hour here, right? You have many candidates, whether it's Cory Booker, whether it's Senator Harris, you have many candidates who said, look, we do think that we should go forward with impeachment proceedings. But the problem is they're about to head into primary season. So if it's going to happen, it needs to happen soon. It needs to happen around the holidays. It needs to happen at a point where Americans are going to be home watching television so they can actually see this impeachment process. If Nancy Pelosi does not push for this, there is absolutely no chance that candidates will even have the time to go through impeachment during the spring period when they're actually going to be out in primary states.
Jason, let's talk about the primaries. We just heard Kamala there. She obviously got a big bump after her announcement, and then again after the first Democratic debate. And I've always found her position in the primary field very interesting. She jumped up after the first debate, started doing well, but she's dropped back down to about 7%. It has to be very frustrating for her. But how does she catch fire? What's missing so far in that campaign that she's being eclipsed now, not just by Joe Biden, but also, of course, by Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders?
So basically, Joe, her educated white women supporters have all been snatched by Elizabeth Warren. And there was a recent poll that just came out from Essence magazine. The only area where Harris really still leads a lot of her major competitors is amongst millennial African-American women. She's still sort of second to Bernie Sanders with that group. She is in a lot of trouble. Her attempt to roll out this brand new criminal justice program is one of her ways of saying, hey, I'm coming back into this. I've got something to say. I'm an expert in this area. But politically, it's kind of difficult. She's sort of like a burglar saying, hey, let me set up your home security system, right? Because many liberals have said she is a part of the very criminal justice system that she's now saying, hey, this is how I'm going to reform it. So a lot of this is about Senator Harris convincing people that she can initiate the change that she seemed to symbolically represent when she first got into the race.
All right.
All right. Jason, stay with us. Up next, we're going to talk to Democratic candidate Dan McCready of North Carolina. He's running in a special congressional